You've been dreaming of apartments, vintage rings and carpets, but that ain't where my heart is. I'm sorry. Ooh, I'm gonna need a minute. I know you're feeling different. I'm not dying to admit it, but my heart is hit a limit. Ooh, you're gonna hate me for a minute. I'll be sorry that I did it. You fall harder for somebody, and you'll be happy that it's not me. And you'll be happy that it's not me. I wish I never wrote this song, telling you I hope it's gone. Don't wanna spin out your wheels in the sand, but I can't control where you land. Wishing I could wave a wand, instead I gotta break this bond. You've been dreaming of apartments, vintage rings and carpets, but that ain't where my heart is. I'm sorry. Ooh, gonna need a minute. I know you're feeling different. I'm not dying to admit it, but my heart is hit a limit. Ooh, you're gonna hit me for a minute. I'll be sorry that I did it. You fall harder for somebody, and you'll be happy that it's not me. And you'll be happy that it's not me. You've been dreaming of apartments, vintage rings and carpets, but that ain't where my heart is. I'm sorry. Ooh, I'm gonna need a minute. I know you're feeling different.
Hello and welcome. Joining me today, we have a very special guest that I'm so thrilled and honored to have a chance to speak with, is Alec Chambers. You just heard an example of one of his original songs that was just recently released. Alec is an original singer-songwriter with absolutely enormous talent, and a couple of his covers are songs that will bring a tear to your eyes, bring goosebumps to your skin. His cover of Halsey's song Without Me has over 15 million views on YouTube. He is a powerful singer, an amazing original artist, as I said, singer-songwriter. And beyond that, Alec is just a beautiful human being inside and out. He's raw, he's honest, he's vulnerable, and he's joining us here today to share with us his story of some of the challenges that he's faced throughout his life, to talk about the impact and where he is today, and then we want to know where you're going to be going next. So Alec, welcome, and thank you for joining.
I'm so happy to be here. I hope everyone can hear me okay. My thing actually just ended, but now I'm back in and ready to go. It's so good to see you. And thank you guys for wanting me to be a part of this. I'm super, super happy to be here.
Well, thank you. I know Alec just is coming off from a tour, so he was just performing last night and had a late night getting in and getting back. So we appreciate you taking the time to talk with us. So many of our families that join on these presentations or webinars are parents who have kids that are facing various struggles and challenges, and parents that are wanting to have a better understanding of what their kids are going through and how to help and support. But we also have adults listening who struggle with many of the same pieces. And so we talk about the brain and development and challenges, but to hear it in your words and in your voice is what I'm so excited to talk about today, to bring to life your experience and what you faced as a child and where you are today.
I love that. And you guys have been such an asset to my life. And I know that we were speaking a lot about this earlier, and I didn't really start to know like a lot of things about myself until later into my life. So these are things that I have struggled with, but I've been able to overcome. And um, before I met you guys, I was really, really having a hard time. And um, yeah, I'm just excited to get into how I started and where I'm at now and the things that I use every single day, um, to be able to regulate myself and uh, maintain a good outlook on on life and on where I'm at. So yeah, thank you.
Well, if you don't mind, let's back up. So if we back up to when you were maybe 12, 13 years old, or if you want to back up further than that, do you mind sharing with us a little bit about some of the challenges that you were facing? What were some of the first things that you noticed and what you were experiencing?
Yeah, so um, this is I just want to say that this is so cool. This is like so cool to be here. I'm like watching everybody come in right now. So thank you everyone for wanting to listen to what I have to say. And I was saying to Rebecca earlier, like um, um, the things that I have struggled with, and I know the things that maybe you guys are struggling with or having a hard time talking to your child with. Not everybody is the same, but I hope that maybe some of the things that I have to say are able to maybe understand them a little bit better, maybe even understand yourself a little bit better. So I always say this, and I said this to Dr. Goldenberg. I'm not sure if this is 100% accurate, but so when I was, I, I had a very normal childhood. I'm the youngest of three siblings. I have an older brother and I have an older sister, and everything was pretty normal, right? On the outside, I think, um, looking at my family and I think looking at all that, everything was pretty normal. So when I was 10 years old, this is kind of the first thing that sticks out into my head is that when I was 10 years old, I was at my sister's soccer game and I was playing tag um, with a bunch of my friends and I think a bunch of her friends. And I I remember running with my head down and the next thing you know, um, I hit my head very hard on my dad's minivan, and I don't know if this has anything to do with the things that I have experienced, but that's like the first moment in my life where I remember I just have it was just a very traumatic thing for me to go through, and I ended up cracking open my scalp or my head. I'm not sure, but anyway, after that, about a year and a half later after that, when I was 12, was when I started to develop a stutter. And stuttering for me um, is something that I still experience every day. Like I still stutter. I still have a hard time introducing myself. And so yeah, since I was at a young age, I have struggled with my speech, and it was definitely hard for me going to school and having to interact with other people, like always being in class and not wanting the teacher to have to call on me, and it really affected me socially and the way that I felt about myself. I think something that I wish my mom and dad maybe were able to understand earlier is that the kind of emotional impact that I think going through something like that has on you. Like, okay, you have a stutter, right? And you know, I just think it's everything might look fine on the outside, right? But on the inside, it's like I'm having a very hard time, right? So since from when I was 11 or 12 was when I really started to develop a stutter, right? And so I went to a Catholic elementary school, and I have like nothing like against going to like a public school, obviously, but I think being in that sort of environment was almost a little bit of a safe space for me um, um, where I could struggle and not be so ostracized for it, I guess, in a way, where and it was like a very small school, so everyone like was very, very close, and so that I think helped me emotionally as I went through my my elementary years. And I've always had a I've always pretty much been a DC student for most of my life, like most of my academic life, even up until I went to high school and up until I like went to college. And the thing was that like um, I think I knew that I was very, very capable of having to achieve certain things. Like I knew that I was able to do certain things, but the problem was being able to express that outwards, right? So, and I think having a stutter, right? Um, I was reading something yesterday that says like 50% of people who have a stutter also have ADHD, right? And with ADHD and autism and sensory processing disorder and bipolar disorder, I think all of these things, they're all separate, but I think a lot of the symptoms and a lot of the things that some of the people experience, I think, fall under a similar umbrella, if that makes sense. So, yeah, so going through school, going through first grade up until eighth grade, my stutter was not really something that affected my life in a tremendous way. Like it did for me, like emotionally, but I was still at a very young age where I didn't have a ton of responsibilities at that time. I was still living with my parents. I was still, like just doing homework. Like I didn't have a job. Like I was just being a kid, right? So, um, and then going to high school, I think, was really when I realized that, okay, this is affecting me socially, and this is affecting me romantically. This is affecting me in a lot of different ways. And um, I think one of the things that was really upsetting for me was that, like, I knew who I was. I knew who I was, but I wasn't able to express that outwards in a way where I wanted people to see the real me. And so when I went to high school, I feel like I'm talking a lot about myself, but I hope in some way this brings maybe a little bit of value to everybody who's listening right now and can shed some light on some things. But when I was in high school, I really never had a friend group. I just kind of was a floater. I was friends with everyone. Everyone knew who I was because of my music. Like um, doing music was almost a saving grace for me in a way because it music and art pretty much like overcompensated for some of the things that I was having a hard time with. So I always used music in that I sang and that I could play all these instruments. That was like as as long as I had that, I was okay with myself. And that was something that gave me like a lot of confidence, even though, when somebody asked me what my name is and I am having a hard time being able to introduce myself. I think that comes with a lot of anxiety, and so I think that's where a lot of my anxiety started was when I went to high school and when I didn't have a choice but to be able to interact with other people and almost become an adult, and that's the thing. It's like a lot of these things, a lot of these things that I have experienced, I think make you feel like a child in some way, like I was 17, 18 years old and now I'm 28 and there are still many things about me that make me feel like a child, and I think that's something that I've had to um not accept but just understand that not everybody has the same path and not everybody is exactly the same. Um so um So high school was good for me, for the most part. Like I think I want to get into kind of all aspects, right? So I spoke about making friends and how that was kind of hard for me. Romantically, like everybody that I had been involved with romantically was never somebody that was in my school, because everyone that knew me in my school didn't look at me the way that I looked at myself, right? So um, romantically being with someone else that didn't go to my school was just easier for me, I guess, in a way, because they didn't see that side of me that everyone else saw who was with me every single day. So again, like these are just things that I think affected my level of confidence going throughout high school.
Alex, something
Um,
that you shared that I think is so interesting, where we talked earlier about how people have varying degrees of impact or challenge, and everybody's unique and different. And you shared how one of the things you recently learned is that 50% of people that have a stutter also struggle with ADHD. And I think that's it's so helpful and interesting to know, but think about the difference. With a stutter, that's something that you don't see it looking at you, but as you begin to interact with people, a stutter is something that people do experience and pick up on, versus ADHD is not something that you can necessarily pick up on by listening to someone or watching someone. And so there's this inner turmoil and inner struggle and challenge where you know you're capable of more, but sometimes having a hard time getting started or following through or executing on a task, where it's that silent internal impact that I think even from previous conversations with you, that your awareness of that came much later in life because it was harder to pinpoint and harder to be aware of. Is that
yes.
a fair way to state it?
Yeah, yeah, and yes, and um, forgive me if I'm, going all over the place. Like I just want to be able to, I want to be able to share how this has somehow affected every single aspect of my life in some way, even if it's small, but has also allowed me to know myself like a little bit better. So yes, being in high school, like something that I always heard from my mom and dad, and something that I always heard from like a lot of my teachers was like, you never open a book, you never like knowing, because when I wanted to do music and that was something that I liked doing, I was all in. You didn't have to, I didn't I didn't need to have like any sort of push. That was something that I loved doing. So that like hyper focus on having to do something that I love doing, that was easy for me. And I think that was difficult to express to the people that were around me. Um, like until I like had gotten older, right? So then after I went to high school, like going into college, right? So I went to three different schools, right? So after I finished high school, I went to Manhattanville, which is in Purchase, New York, right? And I went there for one semester, went away to school, and it was just a horrible experience. I spend most of the time in my room, not socializing with anyone, and just that was kind of the first moment in my life where I was like, why do I have no interest in um, socializing and being the way that everyone else is being? Like why is it so difficult for me to do this kind of everyday stuff? And I think because of the internal struggle that I experienced from having this s- s- stutter weighed on me in more ways than I feel like I wanted to really accept, like just the way that you know feel about yourself, right? So then after I went to Manhattanville, I went to Southern Connecticut State University for about a year, and kind of did the same thing, kind of just did not do well. And then I ended up going to a community college, and then ended up just leaving everything altogether and just not even going to school at all. So it was kind of just like I went down the stairs at that point. But I one of the things that I really remember is just always saying to my parents, yeah, like I'm on my way to class, like I'm going to class, and then getting into the parking lot and just sitting in my car and not going to, and like that's the other thing. It's like a lot of these things that are hard to express to the people that you love and your family is it's hard to express. So like a lot of the times you end up like lying to them and not being 100% honest with how you feel because fear like of having to be judged, and I guess a lot of that sort of stuff. But like I can just remember sitting in my car being like, I don't want to do this. Like I want to do music. Like I know that my mom and dad want me to go to school. Um, but I know that my life is not really going like in that sort of direction, and I know that they want the best for me, and I know that going to school is a very traditional thing, and I think obviously like it depends on like the kind of career that you want to have. There's there's like many jobs where you need to go to school, but and what I wanted to do, which I had always known that I wanted to do since I was at a young age, just wasn't something that I wanted to do, and it really took a long time for me to express to my mom and dad that that was something that I wanted to do. And then kind of like fast forwarding a little bit, I ended up leaving school, um, still kind of, still just kind of hoping that I would be able to make something out of the music, right? And I think having to go into any sort of career that's in the arts, right? Is a very non-traditional thing. So that adds another layer of anxiety and stress. And at that time, I was maybe 21 and didn't have a full grasp on like I didn't know how to regulate myself. And I think I want to get to that like um, so after I left school, right? I ended up going all in on social media, ended up going all in on music. And I worked for a lot of years doing that at my house. I actually still live with my mom and dad now. Um, Not because, you know, I haven't had enough success. It's just that I'm not in a rush. And I think a lot of um, I think right now we live in a world where like you need to do this by this age, you have to do that by that age, and have that by that age. And I think going through a lot of the music stuff that I've done and just having an artistic lifestyle, it's just not something that you can do, and that's okay. Like um, I think a lot of too like a lot of my sadness and like a lot of the things that I've had a hard time with has had to come from comparing myself to some of like my other peers like in that sort of thing. So um anyways, right, I left school and I started having a lot of success with my music. I started to upload videos on an application that was called TikTok, and TikTok really changed my life in a way that I never really imagined. So um I started having a lot of success and gaining a lot of followers, and um that is such a like such a dopamine rush, right? Like feeling like you're on top and feeling like that's amazing, right? And then me being young and not really knowing what a career in music, like is going to entail, like what goes up must come down, right? So after having years of riding this high, I I I went in I got like into a point where a lot of my numbers slowed down. I wasn't having as much success. And so I went from this super high up, like everything is going so well, to everything not really going well at all. And emotionally, that was very hard for me. Um, I was in a like a 4 year I was in a 4 year relationship that had just ended. I was not making any money at all. I was just at a like and I was living with my parents when a lot of my friends and a lot of the people around me were had regular jobs and were able to live a life that they wanted to, right? Um, and then so at that point, I started seeing a lot of psychiatrists and I started going to therapy, which has really helped me. But the problem with going to a psychiatrist and seeing those sorts of people that I had was because of my stutter and my inability to be able to focus, right? It just made me have a hard time expressing the way that I felt and how I wanted to explain myself. So I ended up going to a lot of different psychiatrists that would end up having to put me on a lot of medication that I didn't really need. I've taken like a lot of bipolar medication, and I don't think that I, like am bipolar. I've been on a lot of meds that I think I didn't need, but the problem was that s- having a stutter from such a young age manifested itself into all this emotional anxiety and very much not being able to regulate myself because having a stutter, and um, I know that not everybody listening may have a stutter, but it really caused a lot of these like asking why and like having to question a lot of things and a lot of like emotional outbursts that nobody really understood because I was the only one going through it. And like I think something that made me angry was that it's like I like would always look at my mom and dad and be like, you're supposed to know how to fix this. Like you're supposed to know the way that I feel, why I feel the way I do. And when they didn't, you know, it just really traumatized me. Like like I'm just gonna be honest, but it's like how can they, right? This is something that I'm only experiencing on my own, and um, so I think, um, uh, and I've gone to like a lot of speech therapy programs. My mom and dad have really done everything that they can to be able to help me, but then it just got to a point where it was like there's only so many things that you're able to do to um, um, help somebody with something that nobody really understands. There's not a lot of research on as to why they have it, and just that emotional trauma that I think it can do to somebody. I think it just left me in a place of feeling very isolated and very alone, and not really knowing how to express myself, right? Um, and then so and then I want to get to the point on how I met you guys and how that sort of changed the outlook of my life and where I'm at now, right? So throughout that entire time of having to, you know, I'm I'm at a point right now where I am um, struggling. My emotional well-being is at its worst. I'm having a lot of anxiety, and I'm trying to figure out what is my next move in this artistic life that I want to be able to pursue. Um, um, and then at that point, I was introduced to um, a medication that was called Adderall, and Adderall really helped me. It helped the way that I spoke. It affected a part of my brain where it gave me a lot of self-assurance, and it increased my stutter. No, it made me not have to stutter as much as I was, and that was amazing for me. And that was something that I had never experienced before. I have never had that kind of self-confidence, right? And at that time, being like very like emotionally dysregulated, when I felt something that I liked, I went all in, so so that led to me in a point where I was taking a lot of Adderall. I was also introduced to by another psychiatrist, having to take benzodiazepines, which is something that obviously having the amount of anxiety that I have had since a young age because of not being able to like to introduce myself and all the stuff that comes with having a stutter. Those were things that I loved, and like I got to a point where I was taking all of like these different kinds of medications where it was just a mask. It was a mask for who I knew that I really was and who I really wanted to be, right? And it just got a little bit out. It just got a little bit um, crazy, where like I wasn't meeting with like the right doctors. Not many psychiatrists had like a lot of answers for me, and I was hooked on a lot of medication that long term was not going to be something that was going to have like a very positive impact on my life, right? Um, and also at that time, I was with a former manager of mine, and I ended up leaving that relationship because of my inability to regulate my emotions. And this was somebody that I had wanted to work with for a very long time, and it just like was not really working out well. And so um, but in that process, something that I realized that helped me very much through having to do art, and if I wasn't doing music, I wouldn't know this. So when I make music, I wear headphones. I wear things that allow me to just be with myself. I don't hear the outside world. And I noticed that when I put on headphones, my life is completely different. My life, I am not anxious. I'm in my own body. When I wear these headphones, it feels like there's a wall between me and the rest of the world, which gave me this kind of strength, right? And my last manager that I was with, he has a son that is he has he has sons that are both on the autism spectrum. One is and I noticed that something that he does is that he wears headphones throughout a lot of his day, and that gives him some kind of relief for the rest of the world. And I was doing the same thing, and felt this overwhelming sense of relief, and I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know why. Like, I could focus better. I didn't really stutter that much. My how I interacted with everyone was like a lot more free, and I was just like a lot I like had less negative thoughts, all because when I wore headphones, and I didn't understand it, and it was really um isolating and very confusing, right? So I remember after our relationship had ended, I reached out to him and kind of explained to him how I was feeling, and I know that your son, you know, sometimes experiences like a lot of those same things. And I just asked him, is there anybody that you know that would have any more information about this, or someone that would be able to help me um, figure out what I'm feeling? And that was when he introduced me to brain balance. Um, and I, re- I and I remember when I first went to go meet you guys, I was wearing headphones. Like, I used to walk around in my regular life wearing headphones because it just gave me, like a sense of, just like an overwhelming sense of peace. I didn't have those like emotional outbursts. I didn't. It was just a lot easier for me. Um, and I remember sitting down with Dr. Goldenberg and just explaining all this to him. And the thing that he said is that these are all things that he has heard before many, many times. And that was the first time in my life, after going to a lot of psychiatrists, a lot of doctors, nobody, they would just throw like a bunch of medications at the wall and see which one worked. And having to go to brain balance and having to sit down with Mark Goldenberg, that was the first time that I felt heard and not rushed. And that was a point where I started going through the program, and my life has changed dramatically since I've gone through with the program. My speech has improved more than any speech therapy I've ever gone to. I've gone to. I used to wear like a device in my ear that would be able to echo sounds that I would hear, and that like I have gone through such a process of having to figure out why I stutter, and I never knew that my stuttering was adjacent with my inability to be able to focus in school, and also adjacent to my emotional dysregulation, because like there are certain days like when I'm feeling good and when I feel good about myself, I don't really stutter at all. And on the days that I'm having a hard time regulating my emotions, I stutter a lot. And so before I went to Brain Balance, I never knew how much all of these different sorts of emotional things go hand in hand with each other, and how certain sections of the brain just like are all working with each other. Um, and obviously, like, I think when I first got into the program, I was I don't want to say skeptical, but I think I was at a point where I just didn't know if how this was going to be able to help me, like
Think how
having to
much you had
do.
tried up until that point. You had tried everything you could come across, and
That's,
we're
I
still
think,
struggling.
like the point that like I'm trying to make is that like I literally tried everything almost to a point where I was sort of like causing physical damage to myself, where it was like, is this really worth like having to go through all this? And there are so many things that I did in Brain Balance. Like I like literally I like just texted Mark the other day, and I was like, um, the things that I've learned in this have allowed me to live an outward based life because of my stutter, right? And because of my anxiety and not being able to make eye contact with people, and just all of like the sorts of like emotional distresses that I think fall into that ADHD, sensory processing disorder. I'm now able to focus a lot of my attention outwards, right? So I don't have a lot of this like internal dialogue anymore. I don't like my life and my focus is outward based, which I think gets rid of a lot of these negative voices, and a lot of these not being able to regulate myself, like almost being self self-absorbed in a way, like like I think a lot of these things somehow make you feel like you're always thinking about yourself, and I don't want to be a self-absorbed person or like a selfish person, but when you're struggling with things internally, it's hard not to be able to be constantly thinking about those things. And after going to Brain Balance, and after um, feeling like I was being listened to, and even like throughout like the entire length of it, like I would always go into Mark's office afterwards. Like he was just always there for me, no matter what kind of like insane things that I was saying, right? And it just allowed me to have the confidence in myself and to understand that like a lot of these things that I have experienced, like being very, very sensitive, right? It has done so much for me in the sake of art and making music. Like I sometimes thank God every day that I do have a stutter, because if I didn't, I don't think it would allow me to be able to absorb things so sensitively, and on a just a like a deeper level. But what I didn't know how to do was having to be able to use that in my like in my in my everyday life, because those things are great for what you're doing, like but it's made it harder to live in my everyday life. And after going to Brain Balance, I now know how to be able to balance those things and be able to regulate myself. And it's actually like made me like a much better artist, in the sense where it's like um, I just know how to hone all of these things now. And 4 months
Alec,
ago, yeah.
I was just going to say, that's such an interesting point. One of the questions I get from parents often is, they have this beautiful, incredible child sitting in front of them that has challenges, but this child also often has amazing strengths and talents. And I think parents often have this fear of, if I do anything that addresses or minimizes the ADHD, is that going to dim my child's light? Is that going to take away some of their talents or strengths? Or is it going to give them the message that I'm not loving them and accepting them exactly as they are? So I think it's so powerful that you just shared how your challenges have led to some of your incredible talent that you have with artistry and music, but that by addressing some of the ADHD pieces, it's allowed you to be more effective in other areas of life and hasn't taken away the talent that you have.
No, so one thing that I used to say to one of my older therapists was that I always felt like I was never able to make great art unless I was in a sad place emotionally. Like I always felt like I cannot make something great unless I am feeling sad all the time. And that led to a very unhappy state all the time. And that was something that I was so used to. Like I had a lot of routines and things that I was not able to get out of because, okay, it worked for me this time. So that means that I have to do that, like I have to do that every single time. But actually knowing how to hone that emotion, like knowing when to be able to use it in like the right kind of situation and not just using it all the time, not being in that state every single second of my day, um, has impacted me so much. It's allowed me to hone in that 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 energy and make much better art when I needed to, and it's allowed me to have much better relationships with a lot of the people that I work with, and just yeah, it's not something that you have to be afraid of because I got to a point in my life where I was 25, and like I think that goes back to what I had said um at the beginning, where it's like you almost feel like a child when you're that old and you're not knowing how to regulate yourself in that way. But when you learn how to do it in a way that is healthy and that is fruitful, I think for whatever kind of path that they want to go on, it just makes for an all around, just like a much better quality of life.
Sure. So for all the parents listening right now that maybe have a child that they're worried about or they're seeing struggle in some aspects, what would you want parents to know about maybe something you experienced personally, or what do you want the parents listening to know?
That 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 and this is just based off of my own personal experience with my own family, is that um, you may not understand it, but I think they really understand it. Like it makes sense for them, even though it may not make sense for you on the outside, it makes sense for them. So like I think a lot of the things that I wish my younger self maybe did was I want to say this in a way where just like to be able to to even though you don't understand it, it's okay. Like, I don't think you need to have a vast understanding of how their mind works at this very moment because I think it works for them. And I think one of the things that I wish I had gotten earlier in my life was like I did things a certain way that maybe somebody else didn't really want to do them that way, and they always made me feel like, oh, that's not the right way, or that's like we live in a world right now where you could literally go on your phone and become anything that you want to. Like the world is such a um it's it's just not how it used to be. There's so much more opportunity for everybody. And I think it took a long time for my mom and dad to really be able to understand that, where um, um, just there, I don't think there is a right or wrong way to be able to express yourself. I think everybody has their own way of having to express yourself. There's literally 7 billion people in the world, and they all have their each own individual ways of having to express themselves. There's no right or wrong way. And I think just not making them feel bad about the way that they're acting, like or not asking why do you do that, or why is it, like it's okay. Like I think that the beauty of having ADHD and having um, maybe some of these like emotional things is that I think that they can experience things in like a much deeper way, which I think is actually like a very beautiful thing. And it's just a matter of having to hone it in on the on the right way. But yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. And something else that you mentioned earlier that just always rings true for me that we experience over and over at Brain Balance is so often there's the one thing that you're worried about or thinking about or talking about, but how you saw how so many other aspects of the brain were impacted. Nothing in the brain happens in isolation. And I think as parents, it's easy to focus on the loudest symptom, the loudest challenge, but knowing that the impact is always broader than that. But then the positive on the flip side of that is when you're able to strengthen or minimize or improve one area of challenge, that the impact is broader than just that one challenge. So the challenge is broad, but then also when you're changing it, there's a broad impact as well because of how interconnected the brain is. And I think you've shared how you've experienced that yourself of you saw a reduction in the stutter and you saw an increase in your focus and increase in your ability to express yourself. I mean, your ability to share your thoughts and emotions and feelings is incredible, both through your music, but also you're in conversation. So that's
Thank you. Yeah,
why
and
that,
I just wanted to say, and one of the things that really impacted me is that after leaving the program, like I went from taking maybe 30 milligrams of Adderall a day to now taking only 10. I got off a lot of the medications that I didn't need to be on. I just started living a much healthier, regulated lifestyle after I got through. I, and like I was at a point where I never thought, I was like, this is my life. Like this is just going to be the rest of my life, and it's just something that I have to accept. But I was able to almost reset myself in a way, and I have you guys that I'm able to thank for that. And Mark Goldenberg has been absolutely amazing, and he's someone that I will forever hold in my heart for a super, super long time. Like he's somebody that made me feel so understood, and he like just gave me like the confidence to accept myself. Like I think that's what's so hard about some of these things is is that as you get older, I think you look around you and then you look back at yourself and you kind of wonder like where, like what has happened or where you're at. And something that Mark has like really done for me is just allowed me to like accept myself and to be proud of where I'm at and like who I am. And that's something that no other doctor or any psychiatrist or any therapist or any speech therapist ever did for me, because I think it starts here, right? I think this is where it starts, like, and that's where it ends. And like if you can get into the root, and this is the other thing, this was not an easy program for me. I'm gonna be 100% honest. This was not easy. I had a lot of breakdowns. I had a lot of moments where um I wanted to stop, you know, like, and I think Dr. Goldenberg can really tell you that, like, we had a lot of conversations, like, it was not easy. So I think something else that I also didn't notice is that even after I left the program, I didn't start to like experience all of like these good things really until after I left the program. Like it wasn't until months after the program where I slowly was like, okay, like yes, that makes sense. I can do that. Like and I think it just shows that the brain is so moldable, right? And these kinds of things do take some amount of time. Um, and so that's something that I really noticed was that I didn't have all of the massive impacts until literally after I left the program. And I'm still having them as each month goes by. Like I'm still improving.
Yeah.
Mark Goldenberg always says that the best is yet to come. And when he used to say that to me, I'd be like, yeah. But he's 100% right. Like the things that you do within the brain balance program are things that will shape and mold as you go into your life. And you may not recognize it now, but I promise you that you will. You
It's so
definitely will.
true. In the program, we're building new brain connections. We're strengthening existing brain connections through sensory activity, through physical, but you leave the program and those faster, stronger connections in your brain are still there. And now you're living your life with this souped up brain, essentially. And I
Definitely.
want to point out Dr. Goldenberg, for those of you listening that don't know him, he owns the Brain Balance Center in Norwalk, Connecticut, and Dr. Goldenberg serves on our program council. So he is a kind and brilliant and wonderful individual that has a huge role in our Brain Balance company as a whole. Alec, I could talk to you for hours. We're at 8 minutes. I want to give our audience an opportunity if anybody wants to type in any questions. I forgot to mention that at the beginning. So if there's any parents out there or adults out there that want a chance to ask Alec a question, please feel free to type it in and Victoria will help us with that. But as we wait for a few questions, oh, Victoria, do you have some?
I do, but you can continue and we'll.
I wanted to ask Alec, what next? You've got this developing, building music career and in this incredible talent and feeling more outward and focused now than ever. What's next for you?
So I actually just got back last night. We were saying earlier that I just got back from a 5-city tour that I went on actually with my father, and that's something that I just like had always thought about having like to travel like across the country is something that I always was afraid of because but now it's something that is something that I look forward to. And so what I'm doing next is really just getting ready. I'm just getting ready to release a bunch of music. And now I feel like I have the stamina to do that. And I'm just getting ready to record a bunch of music, having to release a bunch of music, and to hopefully be playing more shows. I think I'm probably getting engaged this year, which is also something that I never thought I would be able to handle or like maintain. So just like
Spoiler alert.
yeah, spoiler. I don't think she's on the call, so it's okay. But but no, like I think I just want to be able to show that like there are so many things that I never thought that I was going to be able to maintain and be able to emotionally have. And I'm just now at a point where am really starting to. So yeah, thank you guys.
Awesome.
It's cool.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
That's great. Okay, so we're getting a lot of questions about similar things, and so many parents, I just want to say, first of all, Alec, are just coming on to just say thank you, which I think for a lot of our live conversations like this, we get a lot of detailed questions, and today it's something that is so prominent is that so many parents have just expressed appreciating you and for your vulnerability and for sharing your story and for sharing something that they can relate to. A few parents said that they have their teenagers on with them, and I just wanted to thank you so much and tell you I will show you all the comments when we're completed, but there are so many. A lot of parents are asking the same question, which is how long was your brain balance program? And then, what have you done or carried through after the program? You touched on this a little bit.
Yeah, so I went through the program for 3 months. It was a 3-month program. I think it was like 16 weeks. And one of the things that I noticed had really affected me after I left the program was there's a certain exercise that I had done a lot when I was in the program. It was where I would stand on a balance beam and I would walk the balance beam, and at the same time I would write the letters of the alphabet in the air and stay while I was on the balance beam, right? And the practice of focusing on what I was writing and not focusing on my feet has allowed me to project the way that I speak outward. Like, I never realized that so much of my speech issues had to do with my inability to be able to focus on what was happening right in the moment, because my mind was always somewhere else, because I didn't want to stutter. I didn't want to, and the fact that I'm able to, like, I can write like this all day and I don't have to stutter at all. Like, something about having to focus all of my energy outward allows me to not have a speech problem. Another thing that helped me with was right after I left Brain Balance, I went on a trip to Europe, and I do not like to fly at all. Flying has been something that has really hard for me. And so something that I did while I was on the airplane was being able to keep my eyes and my focus in one spot for an extended amount of time. Completely switched how much anxiety I have on a flight, or even in like a situation that I find uncomfortable. Literally any kind of situation that feels uncomfortable for me, if I can lock my eyes into one spot, or just keep a lot of my focus and my energy on the things that are in front of me rather than inside of me, has totally changed every aspect of my life. And again, like, these are the things that I have a hard time explaining. Like, I have a hard time explaining this to a lot of people. But those are a lot of the key things that really helped me. I also used to do this thing, and then we can get on to the next question, but just really quick. I used to do this thing where I would have to hold my thumb out like this, right? And I would have to look at my thumb with my eyes this way and my head that way, and that would always make me gag. So I had like this overstimulation, I guess, that was in a weaker section of my brain that would just cause a lot of overstimulation that would make me physically gag. And after I did that for 3 months, I can handle more stress than I've ever been able to, and like, I think that's what, like, a lot of these exercises do, is that it trains you to handle more stress and more anxiety than you have been able to handle before. Like, how to breathe while all this stuff is happening. Like, I never knew that when I got stressed, I would stop breathing, and then that would, like, there's so many different sorts of things that go on when I think you're having these kind of emotional dysregulations that you don't know about until you really start to do these exercises and get into the program. And as I have walked about my life afterwards, I find myself using a lot of these things that I learned there, just like almost involuntarily. So yeah, that's one of the things.
I love hearing you describe parts of the program in your own language. It's so fun to hear, and it's so just powerful to hear the impact. But it's so easy to underestimate how the brain processes motion and movement and sensory pieces. And when we're able to improve the regulation and processing of those things, what that does for our emotional regulation, for our ability to pay attention. Your brain was so overstimulated by all the noise, all the sound, all the information. As you said, it made it hard to focus. So as you've improved that processing of motion and movement and emotion, you're seeing the impact. I love it. Victoria, do we have time for one more question, or are we
I
out
would
of time?
like to ask one more.
Okay.
If I could try to summarize a lot of sentiments from different parents asking about, and I think this is something that we see so commonly with families that we help, is parents are navigating the decisions and the thought process around doing something that's whole brain model, and how does medication fit in with that, and how do you navigate that. And I would just love to hear from you, Alec, about your thoughts around the role of medication alongside, before, after brain balance, and just what is your experience with that?
Yeah.
You did share a lot about it, but
Yeah. So having to after I left the program, I actually got a new psychiatrist that I think was a little bit more understanding of a lot of these sensory things and a lot of the overstimulation, because um, I met with a lot of people that really didn't have an understanding of um, sensory issues, like in that sort of stuff. So what my medication has done, um, at lower doses of the stuff that I, like I'm currently taking now, it just gives me that extra strength to, like, I don't have to I don't have to depend on the medication. Like, I can do a lot of these things without it, but at these lower doses, it just gives me that, like, just like a little bit of a head start, where it's like, okay, now I can get back. Like, I'm almost trying to think of that, like, if I'm getting on, like, if I'm getting into, sorry, I mean, this is like just how my brain works. Like, if I'm getting into the front seat of a car and the car is super high up, like, you have to climb up to, like, some of these lower doses of the medication just give me that extra push to get into the car and to shut the door and to do my thing. Like, it's not like I need someone to now lift me up and have to put me into the car. It's just more of like, okay, here's that little boost, and now you it, like, and now you're ready to do the thing. I can get into the car by myself if I wanted to, but and eventually I will be able to get into the car by myself. You know what I mean? But I think um it's not something that I need to think about all the time. Like, when I was taking like a lot of my ADHD medication, like, it would be on my mind all day. Like, okay, when do I take this dose? When do I, like, it? I would have to revolve my whole day around when I would be able to take that medication. And now, um, it's not something I even think about. It's just, oh, okay, maybe I just like it's not something that I have to revolve my, like, entire day around anymore. So it's nice.
Alec, I can't thank you enough for, again, your honesty, your vulnerability, sharing your story. And from Brain Balance, we are so proud of the work you've done and the person that you are. And we are your biggest fans and cannot wait to see what you continue to do with your music career. Like I said at the beginning, you are beautiful inside and out, and you are so tremendously talented. And can we end, Victoria, with playing Alec's song one more time?
yes. So in a second, I'm going to replay the video that we played at the beginning. It has Alec's original music that he actually just released. It's called Need a Minute. I love this song. And also a bunch of QR codes to follow him on social. You can follow Alec at I'm Alec Chambers on YouTube and Instagram. And he has a new podcast called Chats with Chambers, which I adore because he dives into a lot of similar topics as today in a really raw way, explains things in ways that I may not have thought of before, but it's just been great to listen to. And Alec, we're just so thankful for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much. I super like appreciate you guys. You guys have been like a second family for me, and someone that I know I can like always, like, be totally vulnerable with. And so I just appreciate there is not enough human beings that are doing the work that you guys are doing, and I think eventually a lot more people will understand it. And so I just wanted to. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thanks. Cool.
Okay, so everybody, really quick, I just want to show you our next webinar topic, which is going to be in December on Thursday, November. Oh shoot. Well, this says Thursday, November 7th. So sorry. On December 9th at a special time, 2:30 p.m. Eastern, we are going to have a very special guest, Nicole Lawson, who owns the Screen Time Clinic. And we're going to be going through with Rebecca a lot of different tips around screen time for kids and teens and even around adults, give you a deep understanding of the true impact of screens on the brain, when and how to know when to evaluate if you need outside help if you're having an issue, and tips to reduce screen time at home that are really actionable, and you can take away those tips going into the holiday break for kids. I think it's a really timely conversation that we're very excited about. So again, we just want to thank everybody for joining. Thank you so much for your comments. For Alec, he's going to be receiving them after the conversation. And now I'm going to play his socials and his songs so that you can hear them. Thanks, everybody.
You've been dreaming of apartments, vintage rings and carpets, but that ain't where my heart is. I'm sorry. Ooh, I'm gonna need a minute. I know you're feeling different. I'm not dying to admit it, but my heart is hit a limit. Ooh, you're gonna hate me for a minute. I'll be sorry that I did it. Fall harder for somebody, and you'll be happy that it's not me. And you'll be happy that it's not me. I wish I never wrote this song, telling you I hope it's gone. Don't wanna spin out your wheels in the sand, but I can't control where you land. Wishing I could wave a wand. Instead I gotta break this bond. You've been dreaming of apartments, vintage rings and carpets, but that ain't where my heart is. I'm sorry. Ooh, gonna need a minute. I know you're feeling different. I'm not dying to admit it, but my heart is hit a limit. Ooh, you're gonna hit me for a minute. I'll be sorry that I did it. You fall harder for somebody, and you'll be happy that it's not me. And you'll be happy that it's not me. You've been dreaming of apartments, vintage rings and carpets, but that ain't where my heart is. I'm sorry.